Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Tuscaloosa. I am Ruth Van Lillian, the minister. We are a covenantal community founded on love and a common devotion to our free faith. As we celebrate the burgeoning of spring all around us, let us welcome each other into this sacred virtual space. We especially welcome those visiting with us this morning. We are so glad you found us. We invite you to connect with us in the comments below or on our website and Facebook page. We join with all member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association in affirming and promoting the inherent dignity and worth of every person, and justice, equity, and compassion in all human relations and all systems of society. We bear witness to the pain and suffering of Black, Indigenous, and other persons of color in communities all across this nation, and we continue in our commitment to dismantle systems of oppression in order to build a better world. Black Lives Matter.
Good morning. I'm Anna Schuber, this morning's lay service leader. There is a link to our order of service in a video description below, along with other useful information. Our church website and Facebook page have information about our new online activities. Also, members and friends should read all the Newsnet emails, the weekly e-blasts, and the monthly online newsletter to stay updated on congregational news. The prelude prepares us for the service.
Good morning, we are Chalice Lighting, and we are lighting this morning chalice.
We light the chalice at the beginning of worship to set apart the space for worship, and we invite you at home to light a candle, light a chalice, burn some incense, spray some air freshener, whatever you need to do to set apart this time at home for worship with your community.
We light this chalice as a beacon of our faith and as a reminder of our commitment to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We worship together by celebrating that which is sacred to us individually and collectively.
Our opening words for today are by Amanda Gorman, 3 excerpts from her poem, The Hill We Climb, composed for the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover, and every known nook of our nation and every corner called our country, our people diverse and beautiful will emerge, battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, the far of Him that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars? I know the truth it liveth. What though the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing? This is the time in our service when we share with one another our joys and our concerns. If you are attending in the live Zoom service, you can put your joys and concerns in the chat now. This morning we are remembering our wonderful drive-in Easter service from last Sunday, and we celebrate the work and effort of all the people that helped make it possible. We certainly appreciate everybody's contributions. It was a wonderful time. We also want to celebrate the official conclusion of our stewardship campaign. If you have not yet sent in your pledge cards, please be assured that we will happily still take them, and gratefully. So we hope that you will get yours in very soon. The Finance Committee and the Board are now going to be working on our budget for next year, and they really need as accurate a number as possible for the pledge campaign. So please get those cards in soon. Or you can email or call in your pledge If you've lost your card, that's fine. And finally, we want to remember everyone who has been affected and traumatized and re-traumatized by the recent events across our country of senseless violence, of especially gun violence. It is such a distressing thing for us to see these things happening and think of all the communities which are affected. Let us take a moment of silence, and I'll close this with a few words. Our lives are such a mix of good and bad news, of encouragement and hope and struggle and challenge. We may find ourselves from day to day torn between celebration and temptation toward despair. Let us remember that we are a community, that we have one another's backs, that we have people supporting us, that no matter how it feels, we are never alone. Amen. Shalom. Blessed be. I'll light a final candle for all the concerns and celebrations which went unmentioned this morning.
Our Time for All Ages this morning is about the interdependent web of existence, of which we are all a part. This morning, the interdependent web is going to be represented by this coloring page created by David Snedden, an artist up in Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in New Jersey. This picture this morning represents our hope and dreams and the planet we live on. Everything we say or do in this world affects this world. This world. This world. Symbolically today, our coloring page is right here. When we plant trees, when we recycle, when we help one another, when we speak up for justice, feed the hungry, come to the defense of the mistreated, we add color to our coloring page. We add color to our world. We make it a beautiful place. When we overuse non-renewable energy, like coal and oil, we put dents and cracks in the egg, in the picture, in the world. When we allow our friends to be bullied, when we say bad things to people, when we call names, we continue to add cracks to the egg. When we fill our landfills with products that will take hundreds of thousands of years to break down, when we put poison into the skies without concern for what happens to our skies, whether we can breathe in 100 years or not, we are doing harm to the planet. And we need this planet to live on, don't we? Now, we know that a lot of this damage has been done already to our interdependent web, to the existence we are part of. And we'll never be able to go back into the past and fix that. But we can make a difference today. We still have a chance to save what we have in this picture. What we do now makes a difference. Every time we start recycling, every time we plant a tree, every time we stand up for those in need, we're improving our world. It's both our ecology in the physical way and how we interact with one another that makes a difference. Now, the dents and cracks, as you can tell, are still going to be there, even though we're fixing things. We're getting better. But we are getting better and healthier. And those cracks will remind us of what we're trying to repair. Now, on my personal UU calendar,
The month of April is all about our seventh principle, the interdependent web of existence of which we are all a part, which when I redefine it in a simpler term, means what we do now matters. It matters to me what you do, and it matters to you what I do. And as long as we're doing the best we can to do better, there is hope for the world.
Touch the earth, reach the sky. Children ask the reasons why. In our lives the answer's sure. And by our love they learn and grow.
Out of gratitude for all we have been given and all we have now, we share our resources because we love and trust each other, and because this church enriches our lives and empowers us to make our world better. We rely upon each other, members and friends, and we appreciate the payment of pledges and the generous donations to support the legacy, vision, and work of this church community. Contributions may be made by credit card, by using the link below, or by mailing checks to UUCT. All non-pledged contributions will be divided between our Split the Plate recipient organization and our congregation.
Coretta Scott King stood before me, an imposing presence wrapped in a shimmering fuchsia sari at a special opening of the movie Gandhi in 1983. I held onto my father's arm, and at age 16, I was appropriately awestruck to be shaking hands with one of the most influential leaders of the American civil rights movement, the widow of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. My father had worked with her iconic husband years earlier during the chaotic days when the movement came to Birmingham, and my father functioned as a mediator to help desegregate the business district and transform the oppressive system of city government. While the most famous as the widow of the civil rights leader, King was a leader in her own right, and she took on leadership of the movement after her husband's assassination. She eventually broadened her focus to include women's rights, LGBT rights, economic issues, world peace, and various other causes. As early as December 1968, she called for women to unite and form a solid block of women power to fight the three great evils of racism, poverty, and war. During a Solidarity Day speech, and then on April 27, 1968, King spoke at an anti-war demonstration in Central Park in place of her husband. King made it clear that there was no reason why a nation as rich as ours should be blighted by poverty, disease, and illiteracy. It was out of her continued devotion to the practice of nonviolence, according to the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi, that she had been invited to that special event the evening that I shook her hand. It is a transformative experience to read, listen to, and witness the words and deeds of prophetic people, which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. This is the second of the 6 sources of our Unitarian Universalist living tradition of wisdom and spirituality. In my own ecumenical and interfaith upbringing, influenced by the religious movements of Methodist, Episcopalian, Roman Catholic, Jewish, Christian Science, and Unitarian Universalist, I lived and breathed this stuff. I grew up with such powerful ideas ringing in my ears. A prophet is not, as Hollywood might have us believe, a predictor of future events armed with a crystal ball. A true prophet is not a foreteller, but a forthteller, a declarer of truth, and a confronter of systems which obscure the truth. A prophet tells the truth and calls us to pay attention and to be transformed by that truth. Think of the prophets you have encountered. You read their stories, their poetry. You heard them preach and sing and teach. You knew them or knew of them, and their truth still rings in your ears. Their prophecy still stirs your mind and heart. And every day we encounter new prophets on television, radio, Facebook, Zoom, Twitter, and Kindle. Sometimes we are lucky enough to meet them face to face and listen spellbound to their wisdom and passion as they call for justice and freedom. In his book, Prophetic Encounters, Unitarian Universalist historian and Harvard Divinity School professor Dan McCannon recounts the stories of the prophets and leaders of the American radical tradition, from the fight to abolish slavery to the ongoing struggles for human equality in the face of racism, sexism, heterosexism, and classism into the early 21st century. There have always been American radicals who have drawn strength from their diverse faiths. To forget our predecessors' work is to lose their wisdom and inspiration. The American radical tradition is the path of the prophets. It is the tradition of abolitionists who called on their neighbors to immediately renounce the sin of slavery, of feminists who recognized patriarchy as itself a form of slavery, of socialists who labored to build a cooperative commonwealth, and of pacifists who saw war as the ultimate affront to humanity. McCannon continues to emphasize that it is in our common human connection that the radical movement emerges and prophets come forward. When human beings encounter one another deeply, In the midst of their struggles for freedom and equity and community, prophetic power is unleashed. This is both the power to denounce injustice and evil and the power to announce the coming transformation of the world, to proclaim God's kingdom that will be realized here on earth, or in UU parlance, the beloved community of black and white and brown together. At the core of the lives and the work of the modern-day prophets is the vision of and call for a new, transformed world where there is abundant space for everyone. In 1993, I drove with 2 other clergy sisters in my little Ford Escort all the way from Birmingham to Minneapolis in early November to the infamous Reimagining Conference to join with 2,200 other persons, mostly women from all over the world, to push back at patriarchal oppression in the Christian tradition and to reimagine our faith in ways that would welcome women's full participation and recognize women's current and past contributions. We worshiped God together and named her Sophia in the Jewish wisdom tradition. We sang pagan-themed hymns and used feminine pronouns for the divine. We took Holy Communion together, not with bread and wine, but with milk and honey. One of the speakers questioned the need for Jesus to go to the cross to atone for sins and reimagined salvation as a communal act the whole human race does together through love and justice. It never occurred to me then that 6 months later, the day after I was ordained, my male Methodist colleagues would turn on me and the other women who attended the conference and publicly shame and censure us for our attendance at this dangerous, heretical event. As I look back on what became a pivotal time in my early ministerial formation, I remember so clearly my encounter with a prophet, the keynote speaker on the second day of the conference. I looked toward the podium where a beautiful, powerful African-American woman stood up, and as a hush fell, she began to sing. My God is a rock in a weary land, a weary land, a weary land. My God is a rock in a weary land, a shelter in the time of storm. Bernice Johnson Reagan, Ph.D., was an original member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee Freedom Singers, a curator of the National Museum of American History at the Smithsonian, and a founding member of the Black women's a cappella ensemble, Sweet Honey in the Rock. She had dedicated her life to the cause for racial freedom and justice and to the empowerment of women. I was mesmerized. She sang a while and she preached a while about suffering and strength, about keeping on and journeying forward. She declared, "We'll stand the storm. It won't be long. We'll anchor by and by. The storm is the only way I know what an anchor is. She called us to remember who we were and our commitment to use our gifts in service to humankind. I was encouraged, emboldened, energized. Here was a prophet in the flesh declaring her truth, our truth, to us and to the world. I wanted to preach like she did, with passion and confidence and song. My God is a rock in a weary land, a shelter in the time of storm. With so many communication venues at our fingertips these days, we are rather spoiled for choice to encounter modern-day prophets. Every day on Facebook, my UU colleagues share with me words, songs, and videos of such a prophetic nature. So many of our Unitarian Universalist clergy and lay leaders are finding their bold, impassioned prophetic voices and declaring their truth to multiple audiences. My colleague, the Reverend Adam Lawrence Dyer, is the lead minister of the Unitarian Universalist First Parish in Cambridge. He is a graduate of Princeton University and the Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley. As an African-American UU minister, he pursues his prophetic role in the church with passionate intention. Recently, he published an essay entitled Liberation Universalism, in which he addressed the importance of developing a black theology which is built on the foundation of blackness as elemental to human dignity, not peripheral, not in reaction to the ongoing influences of white supremacy and European colonialism. Ultimately, Dyer writes, Black Unitarian Universalists will have many expressions of their faith. I'm convinced that if the name Unitarian Universalist is going to remain a part of Black UU identity, both blackness and Unitarian Universalism must be challenged and deeply interrogated and put through a rigorous theological exploration. They must also be intentionally woven together in thoughtful and thought-provoking ways. Being Black and UU cannot just be about white supremacy, nor is Black UU identity solely a question of surviving anti-Blackness. Black UU theology is a question of Black affirmation, origins, faith, history, empowerment, and it is categorically unique to the experience and needs of people of African descent. It is not to say that Black UU is better, but Black UU theology must be different. It is needed to carve out places of self-understanding that allow us to grow and thrive within all UU communities. It is time for us to claim a uniquely Black, Unitarian, Universalist theological home. We are surrounded by prophets. There are Latinx UUs calling for recognition and justice for immigrants coming in at our southern borders. There are advocates for differently abled UUs to have access and inclusion in our congregations. There are gender non-binary UUs risking themselves every day to help us all expand our understanding and welcome of the spectrum of human sexual identity. There are same-sex couples exercising their right to blessings and benefits and challenges of marriage in both religious and secular arenas. There are UU activists reminding us that whatever happens to the earth happens to all of us, and the burden of environmental destruction will fall on the poorest and helpless first. Wherever there is injustice in the world, there will be prophets calling it out and crying out for change, for liberation from oppression, for transformation of every human system. Each of us will find ourselves in the position to exercise our own prophetic voice on occasion. We will find ourselves in a situation where injustice is before us, and we will recognize it, and then we will have a choice to make. Do we call it out, or do we keep silence and thereby become uncomfortable participants in the injustice? Sometimes the path will be clear and the risk will seem minimal. Other times we may face serious consequences. We are not angels, my friends, only human beings. We will not always get it right. We will not always recognize what is in front of us, and we will not always find our voice in time. But we can strive toward greater involvement in the work of justice and liberation from oppression. We can listen to those powerful prophetic voices all around us, and thereby we can apply their call to our lives and find ways to participate in the transformation of the world. May we all claim our opportunity to be a rock in a weary world and to offer shelter in the time of storm. Let the prophetic voices ringing in our ears call us to live out our Unitarian Universalist vision of justice, equity, and compassion across the globe. Amen. Shalom. Blessed be. Do you hear, oh my friend, in the place where you stand, through the sky, through the land? Do you hear, in the heights on the plain, in the vale on the main, in the sun, in the rain? Do you hear, through the roar, through the rush, through the throng, through the crush? Do you hear in the hush of your soul, hear the cry, fear won't still, hear the heart's call to will, hear a sigh, startling trill in your soul, From the place where you stand to the othermost strand, do you hear, oh my friend? Do you hear, all the dreams, all the tears, all the sighs, all the prayers? They are yours, mine and theirs. Do you hear,
Please say our chalice extinguishing words with us.
As we extinguish this chalice flame, let us remember that we carry the light within ourselves, which brings healing to a broken world and hope for the days ahead.
Siblings and kindred, with the prophetic voices ringing in our ears, let us go forth from this place to do the work of justice and transform the world. Go in peace. Amen.
Thank you.